Beginning of parshos Bechukosai. If it's the Chittas booklets, it's on page Reish Tezvav, Bechukosai, first pasuk in Bechukosai. In Bechukosai Yelechu v'smitzaset Ishmaidu Asisam Alisam. If you'll walk in the roads of my chukim, of my statutes, of mitzvahs, my laws, you will guard, you will do them. And then the Eibusha says, that there will be bounty in the field, there will be rain, you will eat the bread and it will satisfy you, and you will sit peacefully in your land. And the Torah continues about beautiful things that will happen. Shalom ba'aretz.
We don't see that.
Oh, so why not? So we're doing the chukim and the mitzvahs. So Rashi explains what we have to do. First Rashi. When it says you will go on my statutes, you might think that means to keep the mitzvahs. When the pasuk continues, this mitzvahs et shmoidu will guard the mitzvahs. Hareikiyum mitzvahs amor. We already said the mitzvahs. It's repetitive. Keep my mitzvahs. Keep my mitzvahs. How many times can you repeat the same command? What does it mean? It means something else. You should toil in the Torah. If you toil in the Torah, then you get this reward. What does it mean to keep guard the mitzvahs? Learn the Torah al-manas when the condition lishmor l'kayim, to guard it and to keep it. As the pasuk says, you should learn it, and you should guard to keep it. Like every rashi, we always talk about this. The Rebbe is understanding a rashi. Rashi is pshut shel mikra. He's telling you the pshat. Even if the Gemara will tell you a drash, the Rashi doesn't discriminate. Sometimes he'll bring it, and sometimes he won't. He will bring a drash if it goes according to pshat. If only part of it goes according to pshat, he will bring part of it. He'll misquote the Gemara with the Medrash. Doesn't misquote the Gemara. Like in this case, he brings the Torah's Kohanim. He says it slightly differently. Why? Because he's not quoting a Torah's Kohanim. He's telling you the pshat. And why is it the pshat? Because the Torah repeats itself twice. Keep the Bechukosai Telechu, Shreis the Shmoiru. Said the same thing twice. Do the mitzvahs, do the mitzvahs, do the mitzvahs, do the mitzvahs. I get it. Do the mitzvahs. How many times can you tell me the same thing? So Rashi says it means two separate things. Why did Rashi give such an arichas? Rashi says, I would have thought, just tell me, learn Torah. No, because Rashi wants to explain to you. Don't think you should know, really chukim means mitzvahs. And don't think that, that the rules changed. Chukim really means, that's what Rashi says. Yochel, I would think this means mitzvahs. But Rashi says, you're not wrong. You're right. But in this pasuk, Bechukosai Kelecha couldn't mean mitzvahs, because otherwise that wouldn't make sense. Keep the mitzvahs, keep the mitzvahs, keep the mitzvahs, keep the mitzvahs, keep the mitzvahs. How many times can you say keep the mitzvahs? It's repetitive, so it has to mean two separate things. Bechukosai Kelecha means to toil in the Torah. Mitzvahs at the Shmoyda means to do the mitzvahs. Huh? Oh yeah, we're going to start talking. The Rebbe sicha is always this scalpel. You always have to schwitz to get the
but when it's a modern thing that chukim are mitzvahs, but mitzvahs the parsha says are divided into different types. Mitzvahs, is it a little Yeah, it's mitzvah. Isn't it madna that are called the mitzvahs chukim?
Yeah, good question. We'll talk about it. Very good question. Oh, but the pashta question that right away that's screaming out of Rashi is Rashi says it's repetitive. So it couldn't be that keep the mitzvahs, keep the mitzvahs, keep the mitzvahs, keep the Torah and keep the mitzvahs. So who told Rashi? It means Amal B'torah. You have to toil in the Torah. Why you gotta make it hard for the Jews? Why can't make it easy for the Jews? Learn the Torah. You have to Amal B'torah. You have to toil. Why? Who told Rashi? And then Rashi seems to contradict himself. Rashi says Bechukosai means learning Torah. Mitzvah means kiyum mitzvahs, to do the mitzvahs. But in the next Rashi he says Mitzvah means learn the Torah with a condition that this learning will bring you to doing mitzvahs. So what does the Mitzvah means? To do the mitzvahs or to learn with the intention of doing mitzvahs? Which one does that? What does Rashi mean? Many other questions. Let's get straight to the point. The Rebbe says like this. He thinks that a little boy, 5 years old, would ask a simple question. Sounds a little lumdish, but if you have a straight way of thinking, you can ask, okay, our little boy, like the story of the Ruzhina, he used to ask every rashi they learned, before they asked the question. Before they learned the rashi, he would ask the question that bothered the rashi. Pick up his hand. There's 613 mitzvahs. One of them is to learn Torah. So if you say you have to keep the mitzvahs, that also means to learn the Torah. And usually the Torah doesn't separate them. And we usually talk about it as two separate things.
That's a mitzvah itself.
It's a mitzvah to learn.
You don't say it twice.
So why are you saying it's still twice? It's still repetitive. It's still repetitive. Keep the 613 mitzvahs and keep that one mitzvah. It's the same thing. Keep the mitzvahs. Learning Torah is a mitzvah. That's what Rashi says. No. There's a mitzvah to learn Torah, but that mitzvah of learning Torah doesn't mean you have to toil. It doesn't mean you have to toil. A person wakes up in the morning, he says Bechukosai Torah. What does he do afterwards? He's yawning, he's rubbing his eyes, and he's saying it's the mission of Braisa, because we want to say a little bit. No one's toiling in the morning when they're saying brachos.
How do we measure it?
How do you measure it?
Yeah.
Well, the Chaim Vital said his Rebbe would learn until he would break out in such a sweat that he needed to wrap a towel around his head. I guess that's how the Arizal measured it. But I've never heard even of a tzaddik that wakes up in the morning and he says brachos with simcha, thanking Hashem Yisborach for morning, and all of a sudden he breaks out in a sweat by Bechukosai Torah. That's not, that's not the minig of Yidden. So you see that you could do the mitzvah of learning without sweating. And even more, when you have the Kriyas Torah, Shabbos 7 men go up one after the other, and each one makes a Bechukosai Torah. They're not toiling very hard. The Balkoida maybe worked a few hours and toiling and preparing for Kriyas Torah, especially in Beis Menachem Mendel, because if you're off by a syllable, you hear it, the choir chimes in. But Oila L'Torah is saying it quietly. He's not Amal B'torah. He's making the bracha. He's making the mitzvah. So to do the mitzvah of learning Torah, you don't have to be Amal. But what is the Torah adding here? The Torah is saying it's not just a question of adding in kamus, because that's every mitzvah you have to do as much as you could in the mitzvah.
Right.
If you could put on film for 1 minute, you have 10 minutes, more minutes. It's all the mitzvah of film. If you could learn Peidekechad Shachris, Peidekechad Arvis, that's good for you. If you have more time, you have to learn more. Can't say that the Torah said add in the Torah in kamus more time. Eichus, quality. Amal B'torah, says Rashi. You should toil in the Torah. You should toil in the Torah. Because if you toil in the Torah, you'll see something is going to happen to you. On the story of Rabbi Akiva looked at the water, and he saw that the water can penetrate to rock. Avonim shochakumayim, sochakumayim. That the rocks, that the water can rub away at the rocks. So a person, when he toils and toils, even if a person has a head like a rock and he has a heart like a rock, but if you toil, it breaks through. It breaks through. Okay. So that's the Chiddush of Rashi. That's the Chiddush of Rashi. So
this on the rule that you say on the rule that it's the word of study and all that. That only holds true when we're talking about things like learning the morale, which is really which is a so new to the Torah, and therefore the Torah is kind of it's called in Garitz, it's called the Torah Taktikot. That's the whole issue of learning the morale. It's to break down the Tikot, and it's so new. But that's only part of what we learn in Torah. The main thing is the Pnimiyut, or the root, or the root, which is the Pnimiyut, and that does not require this kind of, breaking,
I hear. Sorry, Chil. But I'm not sure. Is it true? It says that Pnimis HaTorah leis tamon loy kushya. I don't know if the only way to have to toil is only because there's a kushya. Sometimes even without a kushya, there is a degree of amelus.
Okay, even when you're learning Pnimiyut HaTorah, sometimes there's an issue. You have to be a male to it, but it's not like
The same degree.
It's not that it's a totally different thing, really. Like the princess you book about Arisa, and then he would fulfill until he was sweating. So where Rabbi Chaim quotes that when Arisa was learning the morale. But first of all, Rabbi Chaim himself writes that with Arisa, Talmud learning was just a tafel. I mean, that's a very revolutionary thing to say these days, but that's the fact. That he says that someone who someone tries his luck learning Gemara for 2 years and doesn't find himself. That's a great thing to say then.
Eine Moitze Bracha.
It's not something initial, but some when you go to Kamesh Shanim, you should leave it. So that's talking about someone who doesn't seek bracha, but he doesn't find satisfaction and fulfillment in learning Talmud. You should just go leave it and go to Pnimiyut HaTorah, which is the main thing, learning about God and God's relation to the world. But to learning the Gemara,
how do you amend Torah by Pnimiyut HaTorah? How do you amend?
That's what I'm.
You have a good point, but I have to say like this: we find by Chassidim v'Anshe Maisa that they, even in Pnimiyus HaTorah, they were omel in a different way. The amelus was not in figuring out the pshat, but figuring out how to make it a reality to them. Let me explain. The Chassidim had an exercise called Hisboinenus. Hisboinenus, as we understand from the great Mashpim, was not to figure out a chidush. He said this, I'm going to slug him up. No, that wasn't about asking questions. It's about bringing it close to me. That making whatever we learned in Pnimiyus HaTorah about God and His relationship to the world, that I find myself in the picture. And that's why they developed a whole concept called Hisboinenus. Hisboinenus is in a way, a more difficult exercise than learning Talmud. Talmud is in a way exciting. So you say your opinion, and I disagree, and there's a little bit of there's here, there's fire in the room, as opposed to sitting in a quiet position, and not trying to be mechadish, and not trying to ask or dispute or to take it apart, but just to move myself close to this understanding of Elikus and finding it true to me. So there is also a degree of amelus, but I think in a different way, not in the way of kushias, not in the way of breaking out in a sweat, but still there is a concept of amelus. So let's summarize. So we said Rashi.
I had another question. The Torah uses the terminologies Hukim, Torah, and Mishpatim.
Right.
The various Pashtunim have all kinds of explanations how you distinguish one of these from another.
Right.
But they don't really make whole board of these explanations. So do you have something better to it? Well, like,
we're
say,
gonna.
like, say for instance, like
Rashi has a pshat. Everyone has a different
Things
pshat.
Things that are beyond human cycle. But when you really study the thing, that doesn't hold up on the water, because in Mishpatim they say things you could figure out by yourself, and Torah, you're not really sure what that means as opposed to.
Now we're learning Rashi, and Rashi does accept that chuki means things that dvarim u'masayil u'mashivim aleim, and mishpatim are things that things that are logical. Rashi does accept that pshat, and we're learning according to Rashi now. So Rashi is now bothered by an opposite pshat. Again, to summarize, we said that Rashi says it's repetitive. You can't say twice to keep the mitzvahs. You can't even say learn Torah and do mitzvahs, because it's also a mitzvah. So Rashi says there's something else. Do a melus in Torah. So now Rashi says, wait a minute. If you said that we're talking about learn Torah and do mitzvahs, I understand why you would say Torah first and mitzvahs second. Because Talmud maybe l'demaisa, first you learn and then you know what to do. But if you say that Bechukosai means Amal B'torah, the Torah and Torah, why is that the first thing? Why is that the first thing the Torah says before mitzvahs? And the Gemara says, Reb Kahana, it's a Gemara in Shabbos. Amar Reb Kahana, Kadavina Batam Nesori. I was 18 years old. V'hava gemirna l'chula shas. I have learned the entire shas. I never knew this simple rule that a pasuk must stay with Dei Pshutai. The Gemara says, what? I Kamash Malon. The Gemara says, Kamash Malon, the Ligmar Inish Vahad Elizber. Why is he telling us? So it sounds like he's funny. He's 18 years old. He's brilliant. He knows the whole shas. But he doesn't know, 1 plus 1. He doesn't know that a mikra yoytze midei pshutai, that a pasuk has to have a pashut pshat. He knows this pshat, the pilpul, but he doesn't know that every pasuk has to have the straight pshat, simple pshat. So Gemara says, it's a very important lesson. It teaches you that a person has to first learn, lagirsa, it's called. Just learn, and then svara, then understand it. There's two types of learning. There's liyuna, to learn it deep, and lagirsa, to learn it shallow, just to cover ground. That's why in yeshivas they have a different seder. There's a seder in the morning, liyuna, to learn it deep. When you're in the morning, you're fresh, learn it deep. Afternoon, talmidim are tired already. After lunch, so let's cover ground, finish the masechta. Let's finish the whole masechta. This is the Gemara Rashi, Gemara Toisvus, Gemara Rashi. Just cover material, just cover the ground. Because if you learn the yeshivas today, they can end up learning in a year 10 daf Gemara. So according to that, you have to live as long as Mr. Shalach to finish the whole shas. So when are they ever going to finish? So they say, in the afternoon we'll learn, some yeshivas say, in the afternoon we'll learn cover ground. We'll zoom. So the Gemara says, at first you learn Lemigris and then Liyuna. So the question is, why over here does it say if Chukoset Eleichu means to learn it at Amal B'torah? So why does that say first? In order to know the halacha, I have to be Amal B'torah. There's a machlokas that Rambam says that you don't have to know the reason for every halacha in order to pass kanadin. Therefore, he wrote his sefer without any reasons. You open up the book, that's what it says. In the manual, it's written. It doesn't have to say why. It's written here. You do the same. The Rosh said, no. Because if the case is one tad off, and you think, it's the same, but you don't realize the logic. So really the halacha is all different. Therefore, you have to every halacha know the svara. Otherwise, you're off. But even according to the Rosh, it doesn't mean that you have to be a Amal B'torah. It means you have to know all the reasons. You have to understand the logic. So therefore, Rashi explains. He continues, Rashi explains that what does it mean, Amal B'torah, and then it says, the Torah is trying to tell you something, to hint something to you. That even when you're learning in a way of Amalus, very deep, you should always have in mind that there should be a practical application. In other words, Rashi is being a very stark critic to today's yeshiva learning. Even if you're learning very deep in the Liyuna Seder, and you're now busy with the big chiddush of Reb Baruch Ber, and you want to understand how Reb Baruch Ber understood Reb Chaim Brisker, if there's no outcome, there's no practical application to your lumdus, that's not the right thing. Amal B'torah has to be in order. Rashi says, "Have Amal B'torah amanas lishmur l'kayim." And the Rebbe says in a lot of the Rashis, Rashi didn't always write the Dibur HaMaskal. Sometimes the printers, they figured out, oh, this is a separate Rashi, because they were lumdish. These are the words of the pasuk. And these words, Ves mitzvos tishmoru, Rashi never underlined. It's a continuation. It's not that Rashi saying the words mitzvos tishmoru means do the mitzvahs. But Rashi is bothered. Why does it say first Bechukosai teleichu? So it's all one Rashi. He's saying that why is the pasuk say first Chukosai teleichu, toil in the Torah, and then about the mitzvahs, that even when you toil in the Torah, there should always be almanas with the purpose lishmur l'kayim. There should be some practical application from it. And the Rebbe says a moiridik thing. We know in Chabad that there is Friedrich Rebbe had a very big, all the Chassidim, the old Chassidim used to, it was a big deal. Take l'chaim of all night. This was like bechein. Everything was bechein. It was one word. No, two words. No, bechein. What does bechein mean? Friedrich Rebbe had this concept. He said that ein chochem kabbalah and a sign. When a person has a theory, incredible theory. So it's called a theory. It's not called science. When does a theory turn from theory to science? Tested. And tested, and you see it holds true, then it goes from theory to science. That's Pshat and Chochem Kabbalah. So it said in Friedrich Rebbe, same thing in Avodas Hashem. You learned about Hashem Yisborich, you learned Pnimis HaTorah, you learned Kabbalah, very nice. Nu, uvechein. So are you a more refined person? You have more amunah, you have more betochen. Let's see, bechein. That's what the Friedrich Rebbe's big thing was. Right. So the Rebbe always is to have a big chiddush, and I think, even though the Rebbe always said then, what can we learn from here? A lesson in Avodas Hashem, right?
We're bringing in Chonites many years ago in Sukkot, and a lot of Russians in